The morning my husband told me he was leaving, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at him across the breakfast table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, and said, "Okay." He blinked. "Okay? Okay." He stared at me like I'd just agreed to give away a kidney. Like he'd been bracing for a fight and I'd robbed him of the satisfaction. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd already won. I just hadn't told him yet. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Elena Reyes. I'm 39 years old, and until 6 months ago I was married to Dr. Marcus Reyes, one of the most respected cardiothoracic surgeons in the state. We met in college. He was pre-med, charming in that intense, focused way that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. I was studying architecture, the only woman in most of my classes, already used to being underestimated. Marcus pursued me with the same single-mindedness he applied to everything. He said he loved my drive, my ambition, my fire. He said we were going to build something extraordinary together. We married when I was 25. I was working at a small firm, designing homes for people who'd never heard of me. Marcus was starting his residency, working 80 hours a week, coming home exhausted. I supported him. I cooked, I cleaned, I handled the bills, I managed our social life. I was the invisible scaffolding holding up his career. When he finished his residency, his career took off. He became the youngest attending in his department. Then he started publishing research, getting invited to conferences, appearing on local news segments about heart health. His name started appearing on donor plaques at the hospital. And somewhere along the way, he forgot who'd been there when he was a nobody. The change was gradual. He started making decisions without asking me. He'd buy cars without mentioning it, book vacations without checking my schedule, invest in things he never discussed. When I asked, he'd wave his hand. "You worry too much, Elena. Trust me." I did trust him. That was my mistake. 10 years into our marriage, Marcus came home one evening with a look I'd never seen before. Not excitement, something closer to hunger. "I'm starting a foundation," he said. "For children's heart health. I've been talking to some people. It's going to be big." I was proud of him. I helped him draft the mission statement, designed the logo, organized the first fundraising gala. I did it because I loved him, because I believed in what he was building. What I didn't know was that the foundation was a shell. A beautiful, glossy, heartstring-pulling shell designed to attract donations that never quite made it to the children they were meant to help. I discovered it by accident, 2 years after he launched it. I was going through his office desk looking for a tax document when I found a folder labeled Foundation, Disbursements. Inside were bank statements. Not the glossy summary versions he showed donors, the real ones. I sat on his office floor for 3 hours, tracking the money. Donations came in. A lot of them. Some from wealthy families, some from corporations, some from ordinary people who'd lost a child to heart disease and wanted to honor their memory. The money went out in chunks. Some to consultants who didn't exist. Some to event expenses that never happened. Some to Marcus's personal accounts I didn't know he had. I added it up. Over 2 years, he diverted nearly $900,000 meant for sick children into his own pockets. My hands were shaking. I remember thinking, this can't be right. There must be an explanation. I confronted him that night. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look ashamed. "It's called overhead," he said, as if I were a child. "Foundations have operating costs. I'm the operating cost. You're stealing from sick kids. I'm building a career that saves lives," he snapped. "You don't understand how this world works. The donations would never have come if my name wasn't attached. I earned that money." I couldn't breathe. I looked at this man I'd loved for 15 years and saw someone I didn't recognize. Or maybe, I saw someone he'd always been, and I'd finally stopped pretending. I didn't leave. Not then. I should have. But I was afraid. Afraid of what he'd do if I threatened his reputation. Afraid of starting over at 37 with no career of my own. Afraid of the fight. So I stayed. And I started watching. I documented everything. Every transfer, every fake consultant, every donation that never made it to a child. I copied files, photographed documents, saved emails. I built a case that would take down not just Marcus, but everyone who'd helped him hide the money. It took me 8 months. 8 months of smiling at dinner parties, of hosting foundation galas, of standing beside him while donors praised his generous heart. I got very good at lying. Then, 6 months ago, he came home with the news. "I'm leaving," he said. He was standing in the kitchen, keys in hand, like he was delivering bad news about a parking ticket. "I've met someone. It's serious. I want a divorce." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just said, "Okay." He blinked. "Okay? Okay." I took a sip of coffee. "What do you want?" He seemed thrown off by my calm. He'd expected a scene, tears, accusations, maybe a thrown plate. I gave him none of it. "I want the house," he said slowly, as if testing me. "The cabin in Tahoe. The cars. My retirement accounts, obviously. And I want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. About the foundation." There it was. He was protecting himself, even now. "You want me to keep quiet about the money you stole?" His jaw tightened. "I didn't steal anything. But I need you to understand that if you try to fight me, I'll bury you. I have the best lawyers. I have connections." "You have, what?" "An architecture degree you haven't used in 10 years and a collection of half-finished sketches." He wasn't wrong. On paper, he had everything. The money, the power, the influence. I had nothing but 8 months of evidence and a very long memory. "Fine," I said. "Draw up the papers. I'll sign." He stared at me for a long moment, searching for the trap. Then he smiled, that confident, patronizing smile I'd seen him give patients, donors, anyone he considered beneath him. "I knew you'd be reasonable," he said. "I'll have my lawyer send everything over." He left that night. Didn't pack, didn't say goodbye to the house we'd built together. Just walked out the door like he was leaving a hotel. I sat alone in the kitchen for a long time. Then I called the one person I knew could help me. Marcus's lawyer was a man named Lawrence Crane, smooth, expensive, the kind of attorney who makes you feel like you're in good hands while he's picking your pockets. Marcus had used him for years. But Lawrence had a weakness, his daughter, Olivia. She'd been born with a congenital heart defect. She'd had 3 surgeries before she turned 5. The foundation was supposed to help kids like her. I'd seen Lawrence's face at the galas, watching Marcus accept awards for saving children's lives. I'd seen the flicker of something behind his eyes, something that looked like doubt. I made an appointment with him, alone. When I walked into his office, he looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Reyes, I should tell you, I represent your husband. If this is about the divorce." "It's about the foundation," I said. "And the $900,000 your client stole from children." I placed a folder on his desk. It contained the first batch of evidence, bank statements, transfer records, emails where Marcus instructed his assistant to create fake invoices. Enough to prove intent, enough to make Lawrence very, very nervous. He read in silence. When he looked up, his face was pale. "You knew?" I asked. "I suspected," he said quietly. I didn't want to believe it. "Your daughter had 3 heart surgeries, Mr. Crane. How many children could that money have helped?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "I'm not asking you to betray your client," I said. "I'm asking you to let me leave with what's mine, and to not warn him about what's coming." "What is coming?" I smiled. "That depends on him." Over the next 2 months, the divorce proceeded. Marcus's lawyers sent me a stack of papers demanding I give up nearly everything. I signed them all without objection. Marcus thought I was broken. His mother, a woman who'd never liked me, called to tell me how proud she was that I wasn't making a fuss. His friends, the ones who'd been his friends, stopped calling altogether. I became a ghost in my own life. And I let them believe it. The only thing I fought for was the house. Not because I wanted it, I couldn't stand to live there anymore, but because I needed Marcus to think I was still capable of wanting something. If I gave up everything too easily, he might get suspicious. So we negotiated. I let him keep the Tahoe cabin, the cars, the retirement accounts. In exchange, I kept the house, free and clear. Marcus signed the papers with a smirk. He thought he'd gotten away with everything. What he didn't know was that I'd already transferred the house into a trust. A trust he couldn't touch, couldn't lean, couldn't take. And that was just the beginning. The day the divorce was finalized, I packed my things. I took the furniture I'd chosen, the art I'd collected, the garden tools I'd used to plant every rose bush in the backyard. Marcus showed up to see me off, probably expecting tears. He got calm instead. "You handled this with a lot of grace," he said, standing in the doorway. "I appreciate that." I zipped my last suitcase. "I gave you everything you asked for." "You did." He hesitated. "Elena, I know this wasn't easy. But I think, in the end, it's better for both of us." I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd loved. This man who'd stolen from children. This man who thought he'd won. "You're right," I said. "It's better." I walked out the door. He didn't follow. 2 weeks later, the first domino fell. The Chronicle ran an investigative piece titled "Heart of Gold, Hands of Stone." It detailed the missing donations, the fake consultants, the money that never reached a single child. The reporter had been given documents I'd sent anonymously, of course, that traced the funds directly to Marcus's personal accounts. The story went viral. Within hours, the hospital had placed him on administrative leave. Within days, the state attorney general had opened an investigation. Within a week, the FBI had joined it. Marcus called me, frantic. "Did you do this?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Someone leaked documents." "Private documents." "Only you had access." "Marcus," I said calmly, "you told everyone I was a nobody. A has-been architect who hadn't worked in a decade. How would a nobody get access to your files?" He was silent for a long moment. Then, "What do you want?" "Nothing. I already have everything I wanted." "The house?" "The house is in a trust. You can't take it." I made sure of that. I hung up. The investigation expanded. It turned out Marcus hadn't just stolen from his own foundation, he'd been taking kickbacks from medical device companies, billing Medicare for procedures he hadn't performed, and falsifying research data to get grants. The more they dug, the more they found. Lawrence Crane, to his credit, didn't warn Marcus. He'd quietly withdrawn as his attorney, citing a conflict of interest. Marcus had to hire a new lawyer, a young, inexperienced one who couldn't possibly clean up the mess. The criminal charges came 3 months after the divorce. Wire fraud. Money laundering. Tax evasion. Marcus stood before a judge, handcuffed, his face a mask of disbelief. I watched from the gallery, in the back row. His mother was there, crying. His new girlfriend, a pharmaceutical rep half his age, was conspicuously absent. His colleagues from the hospital wouldn't meet his eyes. When the judge read the charges, Marcus turned and scanned the courtroom. His eyes found mine. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at him, the way I'd looked at him for 15 years, calm, steady, watching. He knew. The trial was a formality. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus's lawyers tried to argue that the money was administrative overhead, that he'd intended to pay it back, that he'd been under too much stress. The jury didn't buy it. On the final day, before sentencing, Marcus asked to speak. He stood at the defense table, his expensive suit now ill-fitting from the weight he'd lost, and looked directly at me. "I want to apologize to my ex-wife, Elena," he said. "I wasn't fair to her. I took her for granted. I thought," he stopped. Swallowed. "I thought I was the one who mattered." The judge gave him 8 years. Federal prison, no parole for the first 5. Restitution of $1.2 million, money he didn't have, money he'd never earn back. I walked out of that courthouse into the November rain. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt light. Like I'd been carrying a weight for 15 years, and someone had finally lifted it off my shoulders. The next morning, I drove to a small storefront I'd rented 2 months earlier, a space on the ground floor of an old brick building, big windows, good light. I'd spent my settlement money on a year's lease, a few pieces of furniture, and a sign that read, "Reyes Architecture, by appointment." I'd designed the logo myself. My first client was a woman named Clara, 63 years old, who wanted to renovate the kitchen her late husband had installed in 1987. "I don't need anything fancy," she said, sitting across from my empty desk. "Just something that feels like me." We worked together for 6 weeks. I drew plans, picked materials, watched her face light up when I showed her the sample of sage green cabinets, the color she'd always wanted but her husband had vetoed. When the renovation was finished, she stood in the middle of her new kitchen and cried. "I didn't know it could feel like this," she said. "Like it's finally mine." I understood exactly what she meant. The case made the news. People called me a hero. Women I'd never met sent me letters thanking me for standing up to someone like Marcus. Reporters asked for interviews. I declined them all. I didn't do it to be a hero. I did it because someone had to. Because those children, the ones Marcus pretended to care about, deserved better. Because I spent 15 years building someone else's dream, and I finally decided to build my own. A year after the divorce, I got a letter from Marcus. Prison stationery, handwritten in shaky script. He wanted to reconnect. He wanted to explain. He wanted to know if I could find it in my heart to forgive him. I read the letter twice. Then I put it in the same folder where I'd kept all the evidence, the bank statements, the invoices, the proof of what he'd done. I didn't answer. Some questions don't need answers. Some doors, once closed, are better left that way. My grandmother used to say that the most dangerous person in the world is the one everyone underestimates. She was a seamstress, a woman who never finished high school, who raised 4 children on a machine she ran until her fingers bled. She knew something about being invisible. She also knew that invisibility has its uses. When people don't see you, they stop guarding their secrets. They stop pretending. They show you exactly who they are. I learned that from her. And I learned that sometimes the best way to win is to let them think they've already won. To let them dig their own grave, fill it with their own arrogance, and then hand them the shovel. Today I run my own firm. Small, but growing. I design homes for people who want something that's theirs, not something that was handed to them, not something they settled for. Marcus is still in prison. He writes letters sometimes. I don't read them anymore. The house I kept? I sold it last year. A young couple bought it, both architects, full of ideas and ambition. They're going to raise a family there, plant new gardens, paint over the walls I painted. Good. It was never my house anyway. It was just a place I lived while I was waiting to become myself. I have a small apartment now, in a building with big windows and morning light. My desk faces east. Every sunrise reminds me that the best things in life aren't the ones you take, they're the ones you build, piece by piece, day by day, with your own 2 hands. If there's a moral to this story, it's simple: never underestimate the woman who built your world. She knows where every brick is laid, where every crack is hidden, and exactly how much weight it can hold before it all comes down. And when she finally walks away, don't ask her to stay. Just be grateful she let you stand on her foundation for as long as she did.